Hello there, good morning. Just days after the breakthrough in the ongoing war between the US and Israel and Iran, marked by the emergence of a last-minute proposal for a 2-week ceasefire, fears have resurfaced once again about the return of war. This follows the announcement by the US Vice President that negotiations with Iran in Islamabad had failed, he says, due to Iran's insistence on several issues during the talks. Iran, for its part, declared that it will not reach any agreement that does not preserve its rights. The world now stands once again on the edge of the abyss. So what will happen in the coming hours, days, and weeks? This is what we will analyze in our program today here on our special coverage on Qnews.
The United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
קרא משטר הרשע באיראן, מוות לישראל, מוות לאמריקה.
Now, US Vice President J.D. Vance has said that following more than 21 hours of private negotiations, Washington is seeking a clear and binding commitment from Iran that it will neither pursue a nuclear weapon nor retain the capabilities to rapidly develop one.
I won't go into all the details because I don't want to negotiate in public after we've negotiated for 21 hours in private. But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will.
J.D. Vance, before leaving Islamabad earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the war against Iran is not over, adding that Israel still has further targets to address. In a recorded statement, he claimed Iran no longer possesses uranium enrichment facilities following their destruction, noting that Israeli operations conducted in coordination with the US targeted nuclear sites and missile launch platforms, and included the killing of scientists linked to Iran's nuclear program. Netanyahu described the conflict as a response to an existential threat, he says, alleging Tehran was nearing nuclear weapons capability and expanding missile production. While citing historic achievements, Netanyahu stressed that current ceasefire and negotiation efforts remain temporary, and that Israel intends to pursue all remaining objectives, including operations against Hamas. And then we have the other side. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has said that during a meeting with industry officials, he received detailed assessments on production units, particularly those damaged by recent attacks. He reassured citizens that with coordinated efforts, the country's supply and distribution systems will remain stable and operate in an orderly manner. And earlier, Pezeshkian said that the senior delegation in Pakistan was fully committed to safeguarding national interests and would negotiate with determination. Those negotiations now ended, of course. He stressed that public service will not be interrupted under any circumstances, affirming that the government remains steadfast in supporting citizens regardless of the outcomes of the negotiations. And Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson has said that diplomacy remains an extension of Iran's enduring struggle to defend its sovereignty, emphasizing that past US breaches of commitments and actions by Israel will neither be forgotten nor forgiven. In a post on X, he stated that intensive ongoing negotiations in Islamabad, which were taking place last night and facilitated by Pakistan, had involved continuous exchanges on key issues, including the Strait of Hormuz, the nuclear issue, sanctions relief, war reparations, and comprehensive end to hostilities in Iran and the wider region. He reaffirmed that Iranian negotiators were employing all available expertise to safeguard national interest, stressing that progress depends on the other side's seriousness, good faith, and respect for Iran's legitimate rights, whilst also expressing appreciation for Pakistan's mediation efforts. And meanwhile, the United States Central Command, CENTCOM, has announced the start of operations to prepare for mine clearing in the Strait of Hormuz, as two U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyers transited the area. In a statement, it added that the deployment of the USS Frank E. Peterson and the USS Michael Murphy forms part of a broader mission to secure the vital maritime corridor from mines attributed to Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Commander Brad Cooper said efforts are underway to establish a safe navigation route to be shared with the shipping industry. Additional assets, including underwater drones, are expected to reinforce operations, safeguarding global trade flows. As we were hearing, US-Iran talks in Islamabad ended without a deal, with key disputes over the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. In a report by Axios, they said major disagreements during the talks centered on Iran's demand for control over the Strait of Hormuz and refusal to give up its stockpile of enriched uranium. The prolonged negotiations failed to produce an agreement, underscoring deep divisions between the two sides. And joining us now from Cairo is the Iranian affairs researcher Ali Atef. Thank you very much for being here with us. Give me your assessment of how you think the talks, unsuccessful talks, have gone. Ali Atef, how do you think the talks went? Just asking what your assessment of the talks is. And now joining us from Cairo is the Iranian affairs researcher Ali Atef. Ali, tell me, what is your assessment of how you think the talks went?
Good morning to you and to everyone who's watching us. I think that even though the negotiations in Islamabad they ended without reaching an agreement and a resolution to the ongoing war, but there is still hope when it comes to resolving them and reaching a comprehensive agreement ultimately. And even Iran released a statement today saying that there is still hope in reaching an agreement with the US. And so I think that even the delegations, the Iranian and the US delegations, have reached some kind of a minor agreement, as the U.S. called it, when it comes to some issues with Iran. But the major disputes were the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's willingness to impose some tariffs to for the ships to pass through the strait, and then also the other major issue was the enriched uranium. And so I think that there is still a time for both sides to go back to the negotiations table in Islamabad, and I think that going back to war is still some kind of unlikely, because the 2 weeks truce is not over. We still have around 10 days out of the 14 that were agreed upon, and so there is, or they are likely to go back to negotiations.
Well, J.D. Vance has kind of said that the negotiations are over, and unless Iran agrees to the U.S. terms, that's it. Where does the United States go from here? If Donald Trump is seeking an off-ramp, where will he find it?
The war scenario and going back to the war between Iran and the US is an option, especially because the US has sent some military troops actually since the truce ended, or actually since it started on the 8th of April. And there are reports saying that China and Iran are cooperating on a military level, and so going back to war is not unlikely, even though there are still hopes to go back to the negotiations and to reach an agreement. But of course, everyone doesn't want to go back to war because of its implications on the regional security and global economy. As you know, we've seen that over these 40 days of war, energy prices and oil prices have been greatly affected. And so now we have actually two scenarios. They either go back to the negotiations table and they reach an agreement swiftly, or they go back to war. But this time, this war will be, especially for Iran and generally as well, it will be more strong and more fierce, and it can actually have its pill over, and it will be a road on war. And as for the three countries involved, it will be a war of survival, actually.
Well, of course, I mean, we've already had the massive warships over the past few months, which have been gathering in the Middle East from the United States. And yesterday we heard that the USS George H.W. Bush was also moving in. So they're adding troops, military. Does this mean, do you think, if these talks go nowhere, as they did this morning, and if the time elapses, if it's allowed to elapse the 2 weeks, do you think we're talking about ground troops now?
Actually, I think that this is going to happen. The U.S. Is taking this very seriously, even for the U.S. President Donald Trump. And if we look at all the losses that the U.S. Has endured over these 40 days, so because of all the losses, the U.S. wants to save face, because you know, it is one of the greatest countries, or the biggest countries in the world, and so they won't accept to lose. And then there's also a new issue here that is actually new, and it was a shock for the U.S., which is the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. does not accept the tariffs that Iran is willing to impose exposed on the ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. And this was, as I said, a shock for the U.S. They did not anticipate this. And so the U.S. has been trying to negotiate about the uranium enrichment, nuclear program, and ballistic missile programs. As you know, there is around 400 kilograms of enriched uranium that Iran still has. And then also the negotiations included their ballistic missile, and the U.S. wants to have them decrease their number and the amount of enriched uranium. And so the main issues or the major issues are not yet resolved. And I think that if these delegations, the US and Iranian delegations, don't go back to Islamabad for negotiations for another round, I think that a stronger war is the scenario that we're looking at.
Yeah, Ambassador Rekchi has spoken in the last few hours and said that during the 21 hours of negotiations, at some point, J.D. Vance stopped the talks to take a call from Benjamin Netanyahu, a direct call to his mobile phone, and stopped. And so Netanyahu's on the phone. I must stop and speak to Netanyahu. Why is Netanyahu calling J.D. Vance directly in the middle of these talks, do you think?
Let me say that Israel is really involved in these negotiations one way or another, whether it be directly or indirectly, which is the case here. Israel has a lot of interests when it comes to this war, and they want to end Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile, and they want them to stop enriching uranium. And they are holding on to that ballistic missile program, and they want Iran to end it because they saw its effect during this war, during this 40-day war. And so Israel wants to be involved with this war, and as we all know, the U.S. wants to protect Israel's interests and to make sure that they don't come out losing. And then there were reports saying that the U.S. got involved in this war because of Israel, and so Israel is still involved in the negotiations, even if there was no Israeli delegation. Israel is always involved, and especially in this war, the war that they essentially started. And so and that they've been involved in two wars against Iran now, the 12-day war and the 40-day war. And so Israel is really involved, and this is something that we expected.
I mean, the problem is when you're taking a call from Netanyahu in the middle of talks like that, when you're the vice president of the United States, it almost looks like he's taking his orders from Tel Aviv and not from Washington.
Actually, there are a lot of reports saying that the Israeli regime and Netanyahu's regime especially were the ones that pushed Trump to have this war or to start this war. And I think that these reports are no lie, because Israel could not launch a war this big against Iran without the U.S. As you know, Israel doesn't have strategic depth, and actually Iran's missiles have affected Israel and caused a lot of losses, and this is why Israel has loaned out to not publish any of the facilities or the buildings that were attacked by Iran. And I don't think that Israel will be able to keep up with Iran, especially that Iran has a large stockpile of missiles and drones. There are reports from other countries saying that Iran still has around 15,000 ballistic missiles and thousands of drones as well. And so Israel could not have this war or go into this war alone. And as you know, since the end of World War II, the U.S. has always been supporting Israel, and so the U.S. is always trying to protect Israel's interests. especially now with Trump's regime, because they see eye to eye when it comes to their strategy with their strategy, especially their strategy with the Middle East. And the Israeli regime actually has such a huge presence in Washington, and so this is always pushing the U.S. This presence is always pushing the U.S. to have wars or to start wars with Iran. And the previous U.S. regimes refused to get involved in such wars, but currently we've seen two wars favoring Israel against Iran. And I think that a new war or having or starting a new war is still actually likely.
We've been seeing the pictures on our screens of the Vice President climbing onto Air Force Two to go back to Washington. He's left Islamabad this morning. So where do we go from here? Do you think that J.D. Vance is going to be coming back again to the region for more talks?
Yeah, definitely. He'll have some negotiations with the U.S. regime, and he'll tell Trump all about the negotiations and what happened behind closed doors, and how likely these negotiations are to work. And so I think that J.D. Vance and his team, which are around 300 members, by the way, which is a very large number of negotiations and experts, I think that they can go back to Islamabad. Yeah, this is very likely, or maybe they can go even to another capital to have more negotiations. Trump or Trump's regime does not want to go back to war. Essentially, they want to reach their goals and objectives through negotiations and not just through war. And by the way, the Iranian delegation is still in Islamabad, and there are still around 70 experts and negotiators in Islamabad, and they're ready to go back to the negotiations table. And so, yeah, it is likely that J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner will be going back to Islamabad to have another round of negotiations. And I think that the negotiations within the U.S. between J.D. Vance and Trump will be happening over the upcoming hours, and Trump will decide then if there is if there will be another round or not. But as I said, I think that it is very likely for them to go back to the negotiations table.
Well, let's see. Thank you very much for your contribution this morning. Ali Ataf, Iranian affairs researcher, joining us from Cairo. Thank you very much indeed for being here with us on Q News. Now, turning to Lebanon, where the situation remains volatile as international pressure mounts for a pause in fighting and the start of negotiations there too.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
الوضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has said that in light of current domestic conditions and his responsibility to safeguard the security and unity of the Lebanese people, he has decided to postpone his planned visit to the United Nations and the United States. In a post on X, Salam emphasized that he will remain in Beirut to closely oversee government operations during this critical period, underscoring the priority of maintaining internal stability and ensuring effective governance amid the ongoing challenges facing the country. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he has agreed to start direct talks on a peace deal with Lebanon under specific conditions. Netanyahu added that he has approved the launch of direct negotiations on a potential peace agreement, following what he described as repeated contact from Beirut. In a video statement, Netanyahu said Israel's conditions include the dismantling of Hezbollah's weapons and reaching what he called a lasting peace agreement. He added that the aim of the talks would be a permanent settlement, though he cautioned that the outcome remains uncertain. Lebanon said that more than 2,020 people have been killed and over 6,400 injured in the Israeli strikes since the escalation began 6 weeks ago. Lebanon's health ministry added that the death toll from ongoing Israeli strikes has risen to 2,020, and the ministry said the casualties include 248 women and 165 children and 85 healthcare workers, underscoring the mounting human toll as strikes continue across Lebanon. Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon have killed 5 people and injured several others. That's according to Lebanon's state news agency. Lebanon's official news agency reports that the Israeli strikes targeted homes and infrastructure in the town of Kana in the Tyre district, killing 5 people and wounding several others. In a separate attack at dawn, strikes hit the town of Khayyam in the Marajun district, leaving at least 3 people injured. Now, joining us from Beirut is Dr. Ahmed Yunus, who is an academic researcher and political analyst. Thank you very much for being here with us. So how would you assess the current intensity of Israeli strikes? Has it decreased over the last days, or what's your assessment?
You and to your audience, and thank you for having me in this interview. I think that the drop in Israel strikes does not look like a real move to end the conflict. It looks more like a short tactical pause. Israel is slowing down some attacks, but it is not stopping them. So this means that the goal is not peace yet, but better control of the situation before the talks. So there is also a clear message to Islamabad, where the talks are expected gathering. So by not striking Beirut, especially the capital and its strong symbolic areas, Israel can say it is respecting calm. But this helps show the international community that it is acting with restraint, even if strikes continue in other places. So at the same time, I think that there is a second message inside Lebanon, which is the continued strikes in the south and the other countries show that Israel still targets Hezbollah activity wherever it sees it. So this means that the rules from before the war are still in place. And Israel wants to keep this freedom of action.
So what you're saying is it's not really that they've reduced the strikes, they're just doing them in different places, and it's really all for show for the international community. It's smoke and mirrors, they're not really serious.
Yes. So it's not a real escalation. It is a controlled and calculated step. So Israel is sending 2 messages at once, one outside to support negotiations, and one inside to keep pressure on Hezbollah and the Lebanese state.
And when it comes to the anticipated direct negotiations in the United States, what do you think the challenges or obstacles might be for these?
You mean after the negotiation was failed now?
Yeah, no, not in Islamabad. The negotiations between Lebanon and Israel, which are meant to be taking place in the United States in the coming days, I think at an ambassador level initially.
Yes, you see that the Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, he tries to say and to send a message that Lebanon are represented by the official position, which is the Lebanese government. And he always, in the last 3 days, 4 days, tries to separate the Lebanese file from Iran, and try to say that we are the official decision, we are the official that we are responsible to go with a direct negotiation and to ask for ceasefire. So and now there is a vertical, if we can say, uh, between vertical. We can say it between the Lebanese people, different perspective. So those group, one of the group, they see that the government are not have a national position, united national position, and it tries under a pressure of fire, goes to direct talks, which is not healthy, and not will not get more balance, and because under this under the fire, under the pressure, under the killing, it is not the benefit for the Lebanese people to have a good negotiation. You see, so there is. As we see yesterday, the demonstrations in Beirut, which calls for that we have to cease fire before any negotiation or direct negotiation, to have more justice, to have more balance, not just this negotiation table. It is as if it's extension for this battle.
And what do you make of the fact that the Prime Minister, Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, has decided not to make his planned trip to the United States and to the UN?
You mean
The Prime Minister was meant to be going to visit to the United States, and he's cancelled
yes,
the trip and
and
decided
he
to stay in
postponed.
Beirut.
He postponed his visit to the United States.
Yes, and why do you think that is? Well, what message is he trying to send, do you think?
I think that he tries to say maybe because of this pressure, this public pressure that occurs in the last 2 days, and they accuse him as he is trying to make any peace, not the peace that the Lebanese are looking for. So this makes the talks feel like a continuation of the battlefield. So I think that the Prime Minister now, and even the government, was try to get a united position